Hello and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Justin Philman with Local Government Academy, and I'm also the Keystone Community Coordinator for Castle Shannon Borough. So thank you so much for joining us here at Local Government Academy today. Today we are discussing road repair planning with our friends from Gateway Engineers, so stay tuned for that. If you have any questions, feel free to email those. Let me get the email address up here for you. You can email any questions to info@localgovernmentacademy.org. We will be monitoring that, so if you have any questions, we'll respond at the end of the webinar with your answers, or if you have any comments, we'll discuss those at the end. Real quick overview of LGA. LGA is a tiny but mighty 501c3 nonprofit organization. They take a nonpartisan and non-advocating approach to training and internships, and also provide technical assistance for Southwestern Pennsylvania local government officials. We have a few upcoming events we'd like you to join us for. Firstly is you can learn how to track energy and water use so you can save money with a portfolio manager. It's a webinar with Sustainable Pittsburgh. Look forward to that. That'll be on Wednesday, September 26th. Make sure you sign up for that. Draw the Lines with the organization called Draw the Lines. It's focused on redistricting and redoing the maps. So after the 2020 census, it's a little more split up fairly. Join us for that. It'll be Monday, October 1st from 1 to 2. Again, it's with Draw the Line. We have a webinar coming up with PennSEF to fund your energy improvements today using money saved from your projects from tomorrow. That'll be Wednesday, October 10th from 1 p.m. to 2:15. Again, all these are webinars, so sign up on our website, localgovernmentacademy.org. We have this in-person series coming up, zoning, the PEI course in zoning, and that's sponsored by Local Government Academy, but it's being offered in collaboration with PEI. It's a three-part series. That'll be October 22nd, 29th, and November 5th. $95 to attend that one, and it will be eligible for continuing education credits for planners and lawyers and a few other opportunities for CLE. So if you're interested in that, sign up. $95. And then also our professional police operations training. That's going to sell out for sure, so sign up as soon as you possibly can. It's going to be going this November into December. And $75 this time around, which is a significant savings from years past. So make sure you sign up for our professional police operations training. That's coming up in November. And also, it looks like another webinar with Sustainable Pittsburgh. There'll be community gardening in your neighborhood. That'll be Thursday, November 4th. Make sure you sign up for that. All right, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our friend here, Brian from Gateway Engineers. He's a project manager with Gateway Engineers. And Brian Flaw, PE, he will be discussing road repair and reconstruction and helping you set up your plans for doing your road repair. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Justin.
Surely.
I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today for the Mastering Road Repair and Reconstruction webinar with LGA. Let's get started. I'm going to kick this off with the overview. We're going to start off by talking about some basic road reconstruction types and characteristics, why roads fail. We'll review some types of road repairs and also to talk about some things to consider prior to construction and planning your program. I'll review some preventive maintenance tips, and then we'll talk about some pavement management planning, maybe putting together like a 3 to 5 year plan, and then we'll leave some time at the end for some questions. So I want to start off talking about the different types of roads that we see in this area, mainly asphalt, brick, concrete, and a tar and chip. I'll start off with the asphalt roads. That's the most common, construction type in our area. Super pave is the current asphalt mix design that's approved by PennDOT. So there's super pave layering and binder course, and that's currently what's approved by PennDOT. I think that super pave mixes, I believe they started around 2003, 2004, I think. Prior to that, it was the old ID2 mix, or the Marshall mix, as they called it. Let me walk you through, a typical cross section for an asphalt road. I have a little detail there. It might be hard to see. Now this detail is for, I would say, a newly constructed road. Your current roads, the older roads probably have a different mix of materials under them. But for like a new asphalt road, I'll start off at the bottom with the subgrade, and some of these terms you're going to hear over and over throughout the course. So the subgrade is the dirt or the soil portion at the very bottom of the cross section. So that's kind of where you're starting. You want that compacted, and then you place a geotextile fabric that'll act as a separator between the subgrade and the sub base. Your sub base is typically an aggregate stone, whether it be a mix of PennDOT 2A, which is like a smaller stone with fines. Sometimes you have a mix of a number 4, which is a larger stone with about the size of your fist. And then above your sub base, you typically have an asphalt base or a binder course or both. And then on top of that, you have your asphalt wearing course. The binder course, the difference between the binder and the wearing and the mix design is mainly the stone size. For like a binder, you'd have a larger stone, like a 25 millimeter mix is what they call it. And 25 millimeter refers to the size of the stone, which is about one inch. And then the wearing surface, that has a 9.5 millimeter stone. And that's definitely like a smoother, tighter mix. It's better, you get more water runoff. It's less porous than like a binder course is. Next, I'd like to review brick streets. We do have a lot of those in this region. A lot of them have been here for a long time, 60 to 80, 100 years maybe for some of them. Again, on a brick road, just walking through the cross section, you'd have your subgrade or soil. Your sub base, you may have some stone, you may have a sand and gravel mix, or you may have a base course of like a concrete base with a bed of sand. That's so you can set the pavers on top at the right grade. Next is concrete. We have a lot of these roads in the area too. Again, you have your subgrade with some fabric, and then you typically have a stone base under that stone sub base, which would be about 8 inches is typical for new construction. And then on top of that, you'd have your 8 to 12 inches of reinforced concrete. It could be thicker than a 12 inch. 8 inches is definitely the minimum for a roadway. But it's depending on the loading and the surface of it, it depends on the traffic on it. If it's a heavy traffic and so on, or like a highway, you would have definitely a thicker concrete pad. Also, want to mention, these are typical or for new construction. Your existing roads, a lot of them have some kind of stone or slag base, or like a red dog base with whatever on top of it. But I'm just walking through the typical standards for today. Final type I want to talk about is a tar and chip or a seal coat. Just another term for tar and chip. That's basically a thin layer of stone with liquid asphalt. It's mostly used on rural roads. It's a great application and treatment for rural roads. It's fairly cheap. It's a little rougher surface than like an asphalt wearing course, so it's not something you see in like town areas and whatnot. It's usually not a good fit for that. But again, under these roads, if it's more of a rural road, it could just be an old stone road, and over years and years and years of tar and chip that's built it up over time. Now I'd like to talk about why roads fail. Number one reason is poor drainage or water. What water gets into your subgrade or sub base, you get cracks, and it rains. Water will filter down through, you have a freeze and thaw in the winter. It'll expand and contract. So water is the number one reason why roads fail. There's surface drainage. Some of your streets have stormwater collection system, inlets, piping, so on, and some don't. Maybe it's something you need to look at adding as you're going through your road program upcoming to see if you need to add some drainage. Another big issue is your subsurface drainage. Newer roads that are constructed, we recommend installing under drain piping on both sides of the road. This piping would be installed usually on the edge of the road or underneath the curb if there's a curb. And it's a 4 to 6 inch diameter perforated piping that is bedded and totally surrounded in stone. So any subsurface water, maybe if there's a spring or maybe water that would come down through the surface would filter into the stone and into the piping, and then that piping would connect to your storm sewer system or daylight somewhere. It would need to be daylighted and connected somewhere, which is typically your storm sewer system. One thing I don't have on here I wanted to mention was roof drains. A lot of communities, whether it be to homes or businesses, some of the roof drains come right out to the street, and that's just added water, that collects. And if you don't have a good surface drainage system, that water could sit there, could pond, and it cause more damage to your road. So it's something maybe you want to look at, collecting those roof drains somehow, whether it be in a collection system or whatnot, to keep that off of your roadway. Next is base failure. Really, the base failure could come from poor construction or materials or your drainage. We talked about the drainage in the previous slide with the cracking and subsurface drainage. The poor construction, maybe it wasn't installed properly, proper compaction. Maybe the wrong materials or the materials were bad. This is one reason for base failure. Another reason for why roads fail is heavy traffic. I don't mean like amount or number of cars, 1,000 cars a day. It's more the heavy truck traffic on roads that weren't built to handle it. So if you have more of garbage trucks, every community has garbage trucks, but then you add school buses, and then if you have a bus route or there's a truck route, that can really take a toll on your roads if they're not built properly to handle it. And I've listed salt. All communities use salt in the wintertime to salt their roads. It doesn't have a major effect on asphalt, but concrete it does if you have a concrete road. So that'll cause issues with spalling and deteriorate it more at a faster rate. Now that we've talked about the construction makeup and why they fail, let's talk about some repair options. So we'll start off with our asphalt roads. I just want to walk through a typical milling and resurfacing that we recommend, and we would start with the milling of 3.5 inches of the existing asphalt. So we'll remove about 3.5 inches of the existing asphalt wearing course and binder course. Then we do what we call a proof roll with a loaded triaxle dump truck. So that triaxle is loaded. After it's milled, we have it drive on that milled surface. So we see if there's any areas of rutting or pushing or any soft areas. So if we see any areas like that, that's considered a base failure or a soft spot. These areas are hard to detect prior to starting work. So it's one of those things you would need to leave a contingency in your budgets for soft spots, because it's something that you don't know until you start your milling and paving work. And after you find your base failure or your soft spots, you need to dig those areas out maybe install fabric and then a layer of stone and then a layer of asphalt on top of that to meet with that existing milled grade. And then after that, you would resurface with binder, your 2 inches of binder course, and then an inch and a half wearing course. If I've listed here maybe a 10 to 15 year lifespan, and that's really dependent on what your existing road base is like. If you have a really strong road base, you can definitely be at that toward that 15-year span. If you have it's a poor base, or the drainage is poor, or maybe you're just resurfacing over an existing brick street or something, that you'll be definitely 10 or less, with that. So I put a range in there, but it really all depends on the condition of your base. And I did mention, some places, some communities, they'll just do like an overlay of an existing brick street, maybe. And it's not recommended, because the brick will have reflective cracking come through the asphalt, sooner than later. I listed paving fabric under the milling and resurfacing. So if you are resurfacing over a road that has brick underneath it, you may want to put like a petromat fabric down. Doesn't eliminate the future reflective cracking, but it'll help delay it some. And the same with, you could potentially mill and resurface a concrete street. You can't mill that far down it. You don't want to get into the reinforcing steel, but you can do that. And then, of course, if you would just pave over it, you're going to have you're going to see the existing joints and all the concrete. Eventually, will come through as a crack. So you could use a fabric for that over those joints, or you could saw cut those. I don't know if you've seen them on a major highway project. They'll pave and then they'll saw cut across the road every so many feet. That's where the joints are in the concrete, and that'll just give it a cracking point, or stop point for a cracking. I also have listed here under asphalt roads base stabilization. There are some communities that do this, and the process for that is, it's actually, you initially grind the existing road surface, the binder, and the subbase. So it's kind of like a milling, but you're going to mill up, the road surface, the binder, and the subbase stone. When you typically mill an asphalt street, you don't want to get into the stone at all. You just want to mill up asphalt to have a solid base to drive on and pave over again. But with base stabilization, you grind all that up, then you treat it with a Portland cement, and then you grade it and roll it. And this actually creates a base course. So it'll give you a solid base course. And then there is a curing period for that of 7 to 10 days. You can drive on it, but you don't want to do much more than that. And then afterwards, you would install on top of that base that you've created, you'd install a binder and your wearing surface. Next, I want to talk about full depth reconstruction, and this is process I have listed here is for asphalt. This is if you have a street that is asphalt street, maybe it's too far gone, you can't mill it and pave it, or maybe it's an old brick street or an old concrete street that's too expensive to replace as brick and concrete, so you'd like to install asphalt. So with this process, you'd remove the entire road surface, road material, and the subbase, the stone and everything. Remove it all, and then down to the subgrade, which is the soil. You'd want to compact that soil, proof roll it like we talked about on the milling side, and find any soft areas in that subgrade for pushing or rutting. The fix for a subgrade soft area, it's a little different. You mainly just use stone. Put a fabric in and maybe some larger stone, the number 4 stone with some 2A, and just dig out all that soft material and replace it with fabric and stone. Again, if you're doing a full reconstruction, we recommend under drain on both sides to catch that subsurface water. You'd install your stone base. Could be anywhere from 6 to 10 inches, depending on what your standard is. Then you can install your asphalt base course and binder course, and then install your wearing course. For a full depth reconstruction, listed as 15 to 20 years. I mean, you can get more out of it. I mean, the base is going to last a long time, much longer than 15 to 20 years, but that wearing surface will start to go. But then after that, you can just do you're going to have a strong base, so you can just do a simple mill and pave from that point forward. Other repair options, talk about for concrete and brick roads. For concrete, there's not a whole lot you can do, but if you have areas that maybe individual slabs that they're in bad shape, you can just remove those concrete slabs and replace them. There's a doweling process. You want to be drilling into the existing slabs, and then pour the concrete just so it all stays at the same grade if there's any pushing or heaving. Another option is a full depth reconstruction. That's right here. I'm referring to it as full depth reconstruction, putting it back as a concrete road. And if you would do that, it's typically around twice the cost of an asphalt road. So I'm saying if you would totally rip out the concrete road, it'd be twice as much to put it back as concrete as opposed to asphalt. And again, that's a full depth reconstruction. And again, you get a longer lifespan out of the concrete. Be 25 to 30 years. Just give or take. Brick roads. Typically the brick roads. The issues you see are rutting or pushing. So what you can do is like a maintenance is just repair and reset those areas. Pull that brick out. You need to save it because those old brick streets, you can't go out and buy that brick. So you need to reuse whatever you have there. Maybe reset your base, whatever it is. If it's a sand and stone base, you need to reset and regrade that. Or if it's a concrete base, you need to re-pour that to get that back at the right elevation, and then put your brick back. The other option is a full depth reconstruction. We don't normally see full depth reconstruction where you're putting brick back just because of the overall cost of it. We see approximately at least 3 times the cost of an asphalt street. You get a longer time out of it, 40 to 50 year lifespan, but it's just the cost up front. You could reconstruct it as a asphalt street cheaper, and you can mill it and pave it twice in that 50 years, and you'd still be under cost for the brick road compared to the brick road. Now I'd like to review some things to consider prior to construction. And this is really things you need to look at, after you've chosen the streets that you want to repair for that year. You need to go out and take a look at the drainage for sure. Are there inlets on there now? Are they damaged? Do they need replaced? Do you need new inlets and piping? Do you need to install some under drain in areas are soft? Sometimes you can see a low-lying portion of a roadway and there's water that sits there. Maybe you can put some inlets or some under drain in that area. You need to do any adjustments for the road crown or contours of the road. Sometimes that's difficult, if you have curbs or existing driveways. And then also maybe address the roof drains. Now's the time to, that road's going to be torn up. So now's the time to take care of all those, all your drainage issues. Utilities, definitely, try and coordinate. As soon as the roads that you're paving, you should coordinate that with the other utility companies, the water, the gas, maybe the sanitary sewer authority if they're not owned by your municipality. Because there's nothing worse than the community going and milling and paving a street, and then the gas company comes out a year later and tears it up and pave it again. It's kind of a waste of funds for the community, the utilities, and the taxpayers. So the difficult part with utility companies are they're usually planned ahead, year or two ahead. They already have their budget set and their project set. So sometimes it's difficult to move around. So we're going to talk about planning a little bit later, and that's a big part of setting up a long-term plan so you can submit that information to the utility companies. I've listed sanitary sewer repairs for those of the communities that are in the Alcosan sewer shed. You're under a consent decree to repair and maintain your sewer systems. Now's the time. As soon as you pick your streets that you're doing, have them televise the sanitary and in the storm sewers if you can. Find any defects at that time before you start your paving work. And also some structured grade adjustment, and that's just for the manhole or the water line curb boxes, so on and so forth. That if you're doing any kind of adjustment, even when you mill and put back the same amount, usually the grades are off. You want to make sure those you don't have a manhole sitting too low or too high. Make sure that you coordinate that. Next one are ADA ramps, which is kind of could be a costly thing to consider, because the state law, these are the ramps on the corners of all your sidewalk communities or at a crosswalk. The newer ones you see, they have they call them the truncated domes. It's like a yellow rectangle with like the bumps on it. Sometimes they're red or gray. But state law requires that ADA ramps are to be up to current standards at the time of road construction. So that includes milling and paving. Anytime you mill and pave a street, you're required by law to reconstruct the ramps to the current standards. If they already meet the current standards, you don't need to touch them. But state law says a lot of them aren't, because the standards do change on a regular basis. So it's not just the standards for the truncated domes; it's also the grades and the size and turnaround area. So that needs to be thought out too, and included in your budget. And there are, a lot of communities use CDBG grants to have ramps replaced. You can make it part of your road program, so the contractor that's paving the street or doing that work can just do the concrete work at that time also. Also have curbs listed here, and this varies by community. I'm referring to like a concrete curb for example. Some communities take responsibility of that concrete curb, and in some areas it's a responsibility of the property owner. But if it's the municipality's responsibility, you should probably take care of that damaged curb now, while you're doing the construction for the road. And also you want to be sure your curb reveal is adequate to direct your stormwater. The curb reveal is the area, where between your road surface and in the top of the curb. You want to make sure that's not too low or too small, because sometimes roads get overlaid and overlaid and overlaid, and nothing gets taken out, and there's very little reveal left, and then it rains and the water goes onto the sidewalks or down driveways. Also with curb, if you have an asphalt wedge curb, some areas do recommend, if you're milling and paving a street, just mill and pave that curb out and replace it. Soft spots we talked about earlier, they are difficult to detect prior to the start of construction. So you want to leave a contingency in your budgets for soft spots. You may pave 10 streets and have no problems at all with it. But one year you may pave one street that is all soft spot. It's using up all of your quantity. But you just want to plan ahead for that best as possible. Finally, I have asphalt core drilling. It doesn't cost much to have somebody come out and just take a couple cores of the asphalt to see what you have there now. Are you planning to mill and pave? Do you have enough asphalt on there, to mill and pave it? Sometimes you want to mill, more than 3.5 inches. You go 5 inches to lower the road. And every community and engineer has kind of different standards and thoughts on it. But it doesn't hurt to find out how much asphalt you have there on that street. Have a few preventive maintenance tips I'd like to talk about. We'll go by street: asphalt, concrete, and brick. Asphalt streets, the easiest one is crack sealing. It's not very costly. Your public works crew can do that, or you can hire a contractor for that work. And it's basically, you see a street with cracks on it, you have a tar buggy, they call it, and just put tar and asphalt, liquid asphalt over that crack, and that just will help prevent water from getting into that. Especially in the winter months, it's good to do that in the fall. It's something that has to be done every year. You'll seal a crack one year, you have to come back the next year and do it again. It wears off, but it's definitely a good, simple preventative maintenance for asphalt streets. I have Reclamite listed here also. Reclamite is a penetrating sealer. Some communities in this area use it and like it. It's not a sealer that goes over top of the street. It actually penetrates in through the asphalt, and it rejuvenates the asphalt. It replaces the vital ingredients that are lost from the pavement's binder due to UV rays and wet weather exposure. So it's fairly inexpensive. I think it's around 80 or 90 cents a square yard. And it's spray application. Contractor comes out. Even if you have lines on your road, it'll spray over it. It'll penetrate down in. It won't cover anything. And the turnaround on it is just fairly quick to have cars back on it. Patching here, not many places patch anymore. I left that there. Maybe you just have a large street and one area is bad, and you just want to dig that area out, place it. Replace the base and binder and wearing on it. And I also listed seal coat here under preventative maintenance, and again, that's mainly for rural roads, but definitely a good and inexpensive road treatment. For concrete streets and brick streets, there's not a lot of preventative maintenance. A concrete sealer on your concrete streets. Or you could just come and repair individual slabs like we talked about earlier, the poor shape. And for brick streets, we're looking at just removing and resetting, the brick that are in poor condition. Maybe redoing the base if needed to get the grades back to what they were. Finally, I'd like to spend some time discussing pavement management plans and the importance and how helpful they can be. You want to start, and when I talk about a plan, I'm talking about a 3 to 5 year, plan, long term. And it's not a plan that can be etched in stone and you have to do these streets, because things change over time. Weather takes its toll differently on different roads and so on. But it's good to set up a plan. So how do you start? Well, you start by evaluating streets, and there's a few ways that you can do that. And one is just visual inspection. You can drive around your streets. Maybe it's might be a little easier with a smaller community compared to a larger community, but you drive around and you rate your streets. Whether it's just a personal rating of the public works crew that's rating them, 1 to 10, and then find your worst and your best streets and base it off of that. There's a company called Robotics. It's newer to the area. It's a company that was developed at CMU, and they've developed an application where they actually use a smartphone. They developed the application for their smartphone, and they mount it to their windshield of their car, and they drive each street. As they're driving, they get I think it's every 10 feet they get a photo and a rating. They have a 1 to 5 rating system. So every 10 feet, snapping photos and giving it a rating. and then they take all that data and they create a database with it, and they can provide a map to you with all of your streets showing, you know, red, yellow, and green, red being bad and green the best, based on the surface. It's affordable. We have some communities that have started to use it, and they've been happy with the results so far. But it's definitely, you know, just having them, you know, the application, it seems great. You know, they just drive the street and it gives you a rating, and they can give you a map. They can give you that data and all the photos, and you can integrate that with your GIS database, and they can create robotics can create a map for you, you know, showing the roads. Each road is, you know, again, red if it's poor, yellow if it's, you know, decent, and then green if it's good. And then you can take that information and create a 3 to 5 year plan. Another program that we've used is called Payzer. It's kind of outdated, I'll say, or it's not supported anymore. It's very useful though, if you just want kind of a quicker type plan set up. It was developed by the University of Wisconsin, and with this they have a 1 to 10 rating system. It's actually an old access-based database program where you input, you know, the street name, the from and to, intersection, a length and a width, and then they have a rating system from 1 to 10. So you know your public works foreman or your engineer could drive the streets, you give it a rating, you look at the book and says this looks like an 8, the street looks like a 7. You go input that rating into the Payzer program. And other inputs with Payzer are the construction costs and what your community's budget is. You actually run a simulation, and Payzer will actually give you a 5-year plan and give you the list of streets that you should do over those 3 to 5 years. It's a good little program. You know, it was free. It's available free online. It does take some time to set up the database, get all the streets in and all the, you know, the lengths and widths. But then in future years, you know, that time gets quicker. You're just going through and re-rating the streets. Another one too I didn't put on here is there's other more detailed programs out there. It just takes a lot of, you know, input up front to generate, and you know, it may not be worth it to you to do that. But just looking at, you know, these 3 evaluation methods are, you know, they're good ways to start your plans. Some benefits I want to talk about briefly is, you know, number one is budgeting. You know, every fall, every community has to go through, you know, their budget process for the following year. If you have a plan set up and know what streets that you're doing and how much it's going to be, it makes your budgeting easier. Coordination with the utilities, we talked about this earlier. If you could send, you know, the water company, the gas company, sewer authority a 3 to 5 year plan, and that's going to make, you know, all coordination a lot easier. You know, you guys can, you know, the communities and the utility companies can work together to get the projects done, most likely cheaper, and then less downtime for streets, or, you know, issues with residents and so on and so forth. I mean, you can all get the projects done all at once instead of spanning them over years and years. And also be helpful, you know, benefit is just the council board or, you know, community turnover. I mean, you have newly elected officials. You may have a new manager or, you know, secretary. It'd be great to have, you know, a plan in place. That's one thing they can come in and hit the ground running with something in place. You know, in the plan, you know, setting up the plan. You know, I mentioned, you know, a 3 to 5 year plan. Again, that can change. You know, you can update that every year if needed. But you gotta have a basis for that plan. You know, you want to base it on like a street rating from your evaluation. or you want to base it on your actual available budget. What I mean by that is you may, let's say for a Paiser example, you have it as a 1 to 10 rating, and you may say, I want my community to have a rating, an average rating of 6 out of 10 for all my streets. You know, how much do I need to spend to get to that point? We can actually input that in the Paiser, and it'll tell you need to spend $1 million a year over the next 5 years to get your streets back to that 6 average. In some communities, you only have so much available budget, so you can base your program on $200,000 a year and do your best to meet that. And also with the planning and evaluation, you don't want to always just look at the worst streets. Yes, you want the rating, but you don't want to put all of your money into the old streets. You want to take care of them, whether it be a milling and paving, but you also want to put some time in the preventative maintenance side. You want to look at the streets that are good and fair condition, make sure you're doing your crack sealing, or maybe a rejuvenator or a reclamite, to make sure you're not just putting all your money in the old streets. You want to keep the good streets still going for a longer time. So you definitely don't want to just focus on the worst streets. And finally, under the planning, I have some points on financing. Typically, road programs come from general fund, from within the municipal budget. All communities also get a liquid fuels that get money from PennDOT. It's called liquid fuels, and that's based on how many miles of roads are in your community. And that money can be used for road projects. I think you can also use it for like salt or street lighting, but it can be used for your road work too. And finally, you could do potentially a bond issue. If you want to maybe catch up, you've taken some years off of road programs. You want to get to that. For my previous example, the 6 rating for your community, then you may do a bond issue to catch up to that point. That concludes my presentation. Did leave some time for some questions and answers. If anybody has any.
Yeah, I just checked through the email. There haven't been any questions that came in yet, so
okay.
If you wanted to just run over some final little pointers, that'd be great.
I hope everybody enjoyed this. I started off talking about some construction, the typical construction and materials and some problems, and we ended it with the planning, to me, which is the most important. They get a good plan started, and then moving forward, it'll get easier and easier. So that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank LGA and Justin for having me here today to present.
Definitely. Brian, thank you so much. And we want to thank all of our attendees who joined us live and everybody who's going to watch this video later on YouTube. You can visit localgovernmentacademy.org for more information, and we'll hope you join us for the next webinar. Thanks again.